Hello everyone, Darren from DrayTech Australia and New Zealand. Today we're going to look at user management in DrayOS 5 routers, starting with the new Vigor 2136AX. We'll go over the main features for user management that most people will want to use most often. Things we'll cover today include the Zero Trust model, identity and access management, that's IAM, external authentication, users and groups, access policies, group policies, conditional access policies, how to apply policies to the LAN, IAM resources, the hotspot web portal, and the backup and restore function. Before we start looking at user management in DrayOS 5 routers, let's have a recap of what Zero Trust Network Access, that's ZTNA, is. This was covered in one of our previous webinars, so I won't go into too much detail today. The core principle is never to trust, always verify, and assume everything is hostile by default. That means that all devices on a network should not be trusted by default, even if they're connected to a permissioned network such as a corporate LAN, and even if they were previously verified. So, why do we need a zero trust architecture? With the increase in frequency, sophistication, and the cost of cyber attacks, the global focus on cybersecurity is at an all-time high. However, the goalposts for those tasked with protecting businesses have shifted. Hackers are growing in number, and once they compromise a business's security, they look to move laterally within an organization. Crypto viruses and ransomware in particular are an all too frequent problem. These encrypt everything on a network and then demand a ransom. On top of this, insider threats are on the rise, where trusted users take advantage of their access for nefarious purposes. ZTNA conceals most infrastructure and services, setting up one-to-one encrypted connections between devices and the resources they need. It uses micro-segmentation of the LAN to separate users and applications. With micro-segmentation, use as many VLANs as possible to let the firewall check each access between VLANs. Compare this with a traditional LAN where all network devices are put in the same LAN and the subnet mask can be raised to /16, which makes up to 65,536 devices on one network with everything accessible by everything else on the network. This is good news for malware that likes lateral movement. So if we look at the traditional perimeter security model, here you can see a focus on preventing threats from the internet outside the local network. Under this model, there's not necessarily any security inside the local network, so if a device there gets compromised, an attacker may now have access to internal business critical servers without any further opposition. The Zero Trust model changes this by assuming that threats can come from anywhere, including inside the local network, and take advantage of traditional security techniques, as well as new technologies and features, and even the network design itself, to implement additional security measures at every point possible. Identity and access management is a core concept of implementing Zero Trust network architecture. Okay, let's have a closer look at the IAM feature, which stands for Identity and Access Management. This is now available in DrayOS 5 routers such as the Vigor 2136 series. As shown in this diagram, IAM is a framework of policies that helps manage how users interact with digital resources, ensuring that only authorized individuals have access to specific information and actions. In the context of DrayTech routers, particularly with DrayOS 5, IAM is implemented to enhance network security and management. In DrayTech routers, IAM allows administrators to define user roles, permissions, and access controls. This means you can specify which users can access certain network resources, configure settings, or perform specific actions within the router's management interface. For example, an administrator could create different user accounts for each employee, each with tailored access levels based on their roles within a company. This helps in minimizing the risk of unauthorized access and ensures that sensitive data and configurations are protected. By utilizing IAM in DrayTech routers, organizations can better secure their networks and manage user permissions effectively. The feature not only streamlines the management process, but also enhances the overall security posture of the network. More details can be found in Knowledge Base Article 11950, which I'll link to in the description below. Simplifying what I've just mentioned, in DrayOS 5 routers, IAM will implicitly deny access to everybody, but will allow access with conditions. And when it does, it will only allow access to the minimum of resources. By resources, we mean anything that needs to be protected, even in the cloud. Once authenticated, users are allowed access only to the bare minimum they need to perform their job efficiently. Therefore, if a device or user account is compromised, Zero Trust aims to ensure that the damage is either mitigated by not allowing access or, at worst, is limited in scope. Hence, Identity Access Management, IAM, is the policy decision point for network access control and resource access control. For network access control, IAM will check devices using MAC addresses, for example, and decide whether to give them access to the network. It will also support an identity check using databases such as Radius or LDAP for user account authentication. Also planned is support for Microsoft Office databases for seamless integration with a Teams or Office account. For resource access control, when users request access to protected resources, the following parameters are taken into account. Who, using multi-factor authentication, for example. When, using scheduling to give access for a certain period of time, for example, day or night or office hours. Where, using source IP addresses, for example. Before we start looking at configuration options within IAM and DrayTech routers, let's have a quick look at the menu options. At the top, we have the Users and Groups option, which allows administrators to assign different levels of privileges to user accounts. Users can also be assigned to groups, which will make it easier to control the accounts at a group level. An external authentication server and user and MFA protection, like the brute force protection, can also be set up here. Next, we have IAM policies, where you'll find access policies, group policies, and conditional policies. Policies can also be applied to VLANs. The next menu option is the Resources option, which allows recording IP addresses and MAC addresses of local devices like workstations, network printers, PBX systems, NVR systems, and servers, which can also greatly enhance the effectiveness of your access policies. These recorded addresses will serve as the foundation for creating and enforcing the mentioned access policies. The next item on the menu is the Hotspot web portal. Here you can personalize authentication options and create a promotional experience for guest Wi-Fi users. You can choose a login method, design a login page, create access policies, configure whitelists, and create a compelling landing page post-authentication. And finally, we have the Backup and Restore section in the IAM menu, where you can back up and restore IAM policies along with associated resources. Additionally, an added layer of security is provided with the option to protect policies using a password. Okay, let's get into more detail with IAM configuration. In DrayOS 5, there are two types of users: router management users and IAM users. This separation of user categories allows for more finely grained control over which users have access to which management functions or network resources, which can help to mitigate the potential damage caused if a user account ever does become compromised. Router management users can log into the router and view or change its configuration depending on their role, but their user accounts can't be used for authentication to access network resources or services such as VPN logins. The default admin account is a router management user. IAM users can authenticate for access to network resources, such as logging into a VPN, but they can't access router configuration or management functions. We'll cover IAM resources in more depth later on, but they can be defined in flexible ways in DrayOS 5 to provide additional security controls for many practical applications. If you have a lot of users, groups are an efficient time-saving technique for management, allowing you to apply the same settings to up to 12 users at a time in each group, for a maximum of 32 groups. These limitations may change in future releases. DrayOS 5 supports integration with external Radius and TAC ACS Plus servers, so if you're already using a Radius or TAC ACS Plus system to manage user identities, it's not necessary to recreate all of the users from scratch on the bigger 2136AX. Users from these systems can be used just like IAM users stored on the router and allowed or denied access to networks and IAM resources, added to IAM groups, or assigned custom firewall policies. DrayOS 5 also allows the 2136AX router itself to function as a Radius server too. So you can also use IAM users created on the router for authentication to third-party systems. Enhanced security is a central focus on DrayOS 5, and IAM user accounts can be protected from brute force password guessing attacks by the built-in brute force protection options. The brute force protection works by allowing router management users to configure a maximum number of allowed login attempts before DrayOS 5 starts to impose rate-limiting time penalties between login attempts or optionally locks the user account entirely. IAM access policies enhance security by applying it directly to the network itself. You can use traditional MAC address-based security options, but you can also require a valid IAM user login and optionally enforce multi-factor authentication for that login before network access is granted. These policies can be applied to individual users or to groups of users at a time. Combining options from IAM access policies can restrict network access to authenticated users with trusted devices. This allows for protecting against stolen credentials being used to access your network from an untrusted device. IAM access policies can also be used to create guest Wi-Fi hotspots with captive portals, forcing users to agree to your terms of service before being granted network access. IAM group policies take security another step further. They can be used to apply optional time and date scheduling conditions and optional custom firewall rules for groups. IAM group policy functionality can be extended by optionally applying a conditional access policy of additional criteria to the group policy too. Conditional access policies enhance security by allowing you to set additional access criteria, such as IP address or VLAN requirements and time schedule requirements. These additional conditions can then be applied to IAM group policies to extend their functionality. In DrayOS 5, you can apply an IAM access policy, a group policy, or both to each LAN segment. This allows setting separate access controls for each LAN segment, different firewall policies for each LAN, different IAM resource controls for each LAN, and different date and time schedules for each LAN. We've mentioned IAM resources several times already, as they can be used in IAM group policies, so now we'll explain exactly what IAM resources are. IAM resources are defined by a combination of either IP address or MAC address and a port selection. Any combination of TCP ports, UDP ports, or both can be used along with the IP or MAC address to define an IAM resource. This allows for hosting multiple different services, such as a web server on TCP port 80, a DNS server on UDP port 53, and a remote desktop server on port 3389, on the same physical device, but creating different IAM resource definitions for each of those services so that you can allow or deny access to each service independently as an IAM resource. DrayOS 5 also includes built-in options for creating customized Wi-Fi hotspot web portals. These are perfect for providing guest Wi-Fi access that requires the user to accept your terms of service before being granted access to the internet. DrayOS 5 also includes a backup and restore function just for your IAM settings, so you can back them up before making important changes and re-import your previously backed up settings if anything ever goes wrong. You can select exactly which elements of the identity and access management you want to back up, including users and groups, access policies, group policies, conditional access policies, and IAM resources. Backups can also be password protected. Okay, let's take a look at what some of that looks like in the web user interface. First up, log into the router the usual way by entering its default IP address 192.168.1.1 into the address bar of a web browser. You'll then be prompted to enter the username and password. The defaults are admin and admin. The router then suggests changing the password for security reasons and provides a Change Password button. Clicking that opens the admin Set Password menu, where it can be changed by entering the old password and the new one twice. The green text underneath lets you know if your password meets the requirements. After clicking Apply, you're then prompted to log in with the new password. Next up, to create an IAM user, navigate to the IAM Users and Groups menu. IAM users can be added under the Users tab by clicking +Add. Then just type in a username and password for the new user. Check if any of these other options should apply, then click the Apply button. To create a router management user, click +Add, then select the Router Management button. Type a username and password, Then select a role, which can be administrator, guest, or user. Then click Apply. Now let's create an access policy to restrict web access to authenticated IAM users only, and only from a specific LAN. To create an access policy, go to IAM Policies, then select the Access Policies tab. Click plus Add, give it a name, then select an access control mode. We want this one to be login with built-in user functions, so we select that. Check if any of these other options should apply, then click Apply. Now to apply policies to a network, go to the Apply Policies to LAN tab and select the access policy pull down for the LAN we want it to apply to. Then select the Require Login option. In the Group Policy pull down, select Wiki Group, then click Apply. Now let's test what we just did by opening a new tab in the web browser and attempting to go to Google. The router prompts to enter an IAM login. We'll enter the credentials for the IAM user we just created, and Google opens. So now only authorized IAM users from LAN 1 will be able to access the web. Let's now create a conditional access policy so only authenticated IAM users can access our internal web server. So back to the router, go to IAM Policies, and select the Conditional Access Policy tab. Click plus Add, give it a name. We'll call this one Require MFA. For required reauthentication, we'll make it apply every time. Then click Apply. Now to define an IAM resource for our web server, go to IAM Resources. Click plus Add and give it a name. In this case, we want to add our web server, which is called Wiki Server. Enter its IP address. Choose which port you want it to apply to. We want to specify TCP port 80. Then click Apply. Okay, that's just some idea of what IAM can do and the options available. So to summarize, today we had a brief revision of the Zero Trust model and identity and access management. We covered authentication methods, users and groups, access policies, group policies, conditional access policies, and how to apply those policies. We looked at what an IAM resource is and also had a quick look at the Hotspot web portal and the backup and restore option so you can back up and restore all of your IAM settings. All right, that's it from me, but please stay tuned. Our technical team will be answering questions in the live chat on the right of your screen for the next 5 minutes. If you're watching this after the live premiere, please comment below or email sales@draytech.com.au. For more information about DrayTech products, please check out our website at www.draytech.com.au or send us an email to sales@draytech.com.au or give us a call on 02 9838 8899. Please like and subscribe below, and if you'd like a notification anytime we put up a new video, please select all from the subscribe drop-down menu as well. Thanks and bye for now.